Ever wondered why music teachers emphasize practicing scales? Well, let's dive right into it, shall we? Imagine you're a basketball player. Before you can slam dunk or execute a perfect three-pointer, you have to get the basics right? You need to know how to dribble, how to pass, and how to shoot. These are your scales in the world of basketball. Now let's say you're a dancer. Before you can twirl like a prima ballerina or pop and lock like a seasoned breakdancer, you must master your basic steps, your footwork, your rhythm. These are your scales in the dance world. Or let's take woodworking. You can't just jump right in and create a stunning oak table without knowing how to measure accurately, how to cut straight, or how to sand down rough edges. These are your scales in the realm of woodworking. And what about art? You can't paint like Van Gogh or sculpt like Michelangelo without understanding color theory, without mastering the art of shading, without knowing how to sketch a simple form. These are your scales in the field of art. Even in public speaking, you can't captivate an audience without knowing how to project your voice, how to pace your speech, or how to engage with your listeners. These are your scales in the world of oratory. In each of these examples, the scales, the basics, are the foundation. They're the building blocks from which you develop more complex skills, the stepping stones that lead you towards mastery. And it's no different in music. In music, scales are your ABCs. They're your bread and butter, your nuts and bolts. They're the groundwork from which you build melodies, harmonies, and rhythms. They're the tools you use to express emotion, to tell a story, to create a mood. They're the keys that unlock the door to the vast universe of music. So next time your music teacher tells you to practice your scales, remember this: just like how a dancer needs to perfect every move, musicians need to master their scales. Let me tell you a story of a young musician who thought scales were boring. This budding artist, let's call him Melvin, was passionate about music. He could play a mean guitar and had a knack for catchy tunes. But when it came to scales, he'd roll his eyes and pluck at his guitar strings half-heartedly. Now, Melvin's music teacher, Miss Harmony, was a wise woman. She knew that scales were the building blocks of music, much like practicing dribbling in basketball or perfecting brushstrokes in art. Seeing Melvin's lack of enthusiasm, she decided to give him a challenge. She tasked Melvin with creating a piece of music without using any scales. Melvin, always up for a challenge, got to work. He strummed, he plucked, he even tried to beatbox with his guitar. But soon he found himself stuck in a rut. His music lacked structure, it felt disjointed. It was like trying to paint a picture without knowing how to mix colors. Seeing Melvin struggle, Miss Harmony stepped in. She explained how scales provided a roadmap for creating melodies and harmonies. They were foundational, like learning how to cut wood before building a cabinet, or mastering the pirouette before performing a ballet routine. With newfound respect for scales, Melvin started practicing them with fervor. He discovered that scales improved his dexterity, making his fingers nimble on the guitar. He understood chord progressions better, and his solos started sounding more polished. Most importantly, he found that scales sparked his musical creativity. They were not a chore, but a tool, a secret ingredient that added flavor to his music. And that's how our young musician discovered that scales were not just a chore, but a key to unlock the music world. Just like how a basketball player needs to dribble, a painter needs to mix colors, and a dancer needs to pirouette, a musician needs to practice scales. It's not always the most glamorous part of the process, but it's a crucial step in mastering the craft. Now, let's dive into how to effectively practice scales. So, you're ready to conquer the world of scales. Fantastic! Here are some tips to get you started. First, remember the age-old adage, slow and steady wins the race. Well, it's not just a saying for the tortoise and the hare, it's also a golden rule for practicing scales. Start slow, focus on getting the notes right, the fingerings correct, and gradually increase your speed. It's like learning how to walk before you start running a marathon. Next, let's talk about our little friend, the metronome. It may seem like an annoying ticking device, but it's actually your best ally. Practicing scales with a metronome helps you establish a steady rhythm. It's like having a personal trainer for your fingers, making sure they're hitting the right notes at the right time. Now, you might be excited to learn all the scales at once, but here's a tip. Focus on one scale at a time. Imagine trying to juggle 5 balls when you've just learned how to juggle one. It's the same with scales. Master one, then move on to the next. It's not a race, it's a journey. And finally, consistency is key. Practicing scales regularly is like brushing your teeth. You wouldn't skip a day, would you? The same goes for your scales. A little practice every day is far more effective than a marathon session once a week. So remember, When you're practicing scales, think slow and steady, befriend the metronome, focus on one scale at a time, and practice consistently. It's like baking a cake. You wouldn't throw all the ingredients in at once and hope for the best, would you? And don't forget to have fun. After all, music is all about enjoyment. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will your scales' perfection. So, are you ready to conquer the world of music with your scales? If your answer is a resounding yes, then it's time to take the next step. By signing up for music lessons with Dupre Academy of Music, you're not just learning to play an instrument, you're joining a community. Our experienced teachers are not just instructors, they're mentors who guide you along your musical journey. They create an environment that's not just friendly, but also inspiring and focused on your individual growth. Music, like any other skill, requires practice and dedication. And just as a carpenter hones his craft or a dancer perfects her pirouette, you too can become a maestro of your chosen instrument. But remember, every maestro's journey begins with the humble scale. So don't let your musical journey end here. Join Dupre Academy of Music today, and let's make beautiful music together. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more musical wisdom.